Fly through this. Welcome, 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 one and all, to another edition of Run the Block, brought to you by the Live Rich Project. We have an action-packed episode today. We're going to talk about influencers and are they broke or are they making that mad cash, son? We're going to talk about the number one rated news app. We're going to talk about the possible demise of middle managers, and a topic that I'm sure is near and dear to a lot of your guys' heart, especially the listeners here, is going to be the U.S. government's top dietitians found limited evidence that ultra-processed foods cause weight gain faster than any other food, and what that means for our industry. Michael, what is going on? Where do we start? And ultimately, are we going in the right direction, man? Just start philosophically today.
You know, man, I put up a tweet this morning and it just asked a simple question. Have you taken your daily dose of the white pill? Are we going in the right direction? Absolutely. Because we're just trying to make things better. That's always the right direction to move in. Trying to bring people together, trying to get education and resources out there, trying to empower people to better their lives. So yeah, I think we're going in the right direction, man.
Can you break down, because I know we always joke about white pill, black pill, red pill, was it blue pill? I don't even know all the pills. I know white pill and black pill. I don't know the others besides from the Matrix. So can you just break those down like in, 2 minutes, what each one is? That way, if we ever allude to them, people understand what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So the blue pill and the red pill come from the Matrix. It's what Morpheus presents to Neo as far as you can take this pill and stay asleep and at the wheel, or you can take this pill and go down the rabbit hole and see how far it goes, right? To basically find the truth. So the blue pill is going to be asleep at the wheel. The blue pill, if we're going to relate it to a party side, is going to be left-leaning. It is not the resistance, right? If you take just a historic view, if you're typically agreeing with media outlets, celebrities, and the government, you're not part of the resistance. I'm just putting that out there. I don't care about your politics. This is just an observation. The red pill is the conservative, traditional masculinity, traditional gender roles, and all of those things. So that's taking the red pill. The red pill is a step towards conservatism and revival of the past, right? MAGA and all those things. Then you have the black pill. The black pill is gloom and doom. The black pill is the future is written and we can't do anything about it. The black pill is we are on our way to 1984. We are on our way to Skynet, singularity from Terminator, and all of those things, right? That's the black pill. No matter what, it's going to get bad. The white pill is the pill of optimism. It's the pill of hope. It is the pill that you have freedom. You have free will. You have choice. Yes. There are 100% agents and agencies trying to control your will. We know this to be true. But you have that freedom of choice. You have the ability to govern yourself. You're not an NPC, right? You awaken from the Matrix and you build optimistically. And so that is the pill breakdown. I would encourage you all to take your white pill every single morning.
I take a giant yellow pill and white pill and some brown pills every morning for gut health and fish oil and vitamin C, if that counts. Vitamin C is white, so I will say that.
I don't think we should introduce a brown pill. I don't know what that means.
Let's dive into the influencers debate, because we promised last episode that we would share some of that data, and I know you were kind of looking into that to really see. One, because if someone's younger listening to this, right, maybe mid-20s, early 30s, they're thinking, I got to build a massive audience for a business or anything else, right? And I can just peddle Amazon products and maybe make some money. But also, today's influencer is yesterday's Mary Kay salesman, right? Like that's where you're at. And I'm not knocking that. My aunt made a lot of money selling Mary Kay through the 80s and 90s. Like, that's what she did. She was, one of their gold select Black Diamond VIPs or whatever, right? She got the car. She was one of the first ones I ever knew.
That's right.
Yeah, dude, she had that with a cell phone inside of it, and I remember like seeing that
Ooh.
like in the box, right? You pick it up and it was
Well,
in the box. Like,
hold on, hold on. I think you mean she had a car phone in it.
yeah,
Something that has been dead for decades. The car phone.
yeah, for sure. So, not knocking that. That's what you want to do. Totally fine. Do what you want to do to
Absolutely.
make your cash, but break down for us what you've kind of found and what the data suggests as far as influencing and building an audience.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's again, the weekly shout out to our homeboy Neil Patel. Is it worth being an influencer? The reason why I wanted to dive into this one is because for the younger audience, for the millennials, the younger millennials and the Zoomers, it is commonplace to ask a kid what they want to be and to hear influencer as an answer. And now that I say that, I'm going to try to find the data on that to prove this point. But that's why I wanted to hop into this, because that's legitimately a response to what do you want to be when you grow up? An astronaut, a doctor, an athlete? No, an influencer. I want to point to bubbles on TikTok. Right? So is it worth being an influencer? So from Neil Patel and Co., they surveyed just under 6,000 influencers, and their average monthly income is $323.19 a month. So we can divide that by a day, or by, essentially 30 days in a general month, and say that they're making $11 a day. That's not very influential. So even if we go up to, and I'm super glad they included this, we're getting a little depth, right? A little bit more context. Even with influencers over 1 million followers, their average income generated is $6,109.83 a month. So if you have 1 million followers, the average that you can monetize 1 million people to annually is about $75,000. And that's insane that you can get 1 million followers on average, and that is the monetization rate. And so just consider the amount of work, the amount of energy that goes into building that kind of an audience. Is it worth it for that ROI? I would say that most people out there don't have a very adequate strategy to monetize their audience. You don't need to have a huge audience. You need to position yourself as a micro authority in your niche for your audience. And you can have an audience of 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, and you can monetize. Well above that, you just have to be providing enough value on the back end, and standing around pointing at things is not adding a lot of value. When you look at the Neil Patel brand, it doesn't generate more than $10 million a year, but that's pretty dang good, right? And so you look at Kylie Cosmetics, and so this is Kylie Jenner. Majority of the company was sold for $600 million. Keep in mind, Kylie has roughly 400 million fans, and that's just on Instagram. Right now, within that, how many are just creepy people who are just staring at a girl? You know what I mean? Like, I'm fairly certain there's a reasonably high number within that. And so there's different types of fans for influencers. But that's not a great monetization rate. And you can look at Legion Athletics, 30 to 40K a month in revenue from the founder's personal brand. The influencers are generating $400,000 to $500,000 a month for the brand. So the type of brand and company that you support will also make a difference. Now, this is athletic. This is athleisure wear. And so this is as much as it's a health brand, it's also very much a fashion brand, right? And people will spend money on looking good because that's their marketing, and that's what leads to their own personal confidence. And so the thing that you're actually selling makes a big difference. Countless more examples. Yes, you can generate revenue, but just understanding audience growth, the way that you do social media, the digital world, do you feel that that much of an ROI is worth the path of being a quote unquote influencer?
Yeah, in that post too, like it even says on Neil Patel's, they're like, we generate 10 million a year in revenue, and if you make little to no money doing it, you're like, that's a lot of money. I'd love that for sure. But what it goes on to say too is that like that's a single digit percentile of our total business. So at the same time, it's like, well, he grew a business first and then started releasing stuff as social media became more and more relevant for building audiences and things like that. And the other key thing here is like they close out with, it's easier to leverage influencers than to try just to become one. You have to also be careful with who you partner with. This happens all the time. Like in our industry, as far as our industry, I mean like health and fitness. It's not for nothing. Nobody wants to end up on Goob's page, right? Like I think
Oh.
every influencer's scared to death to open up their Instagram and end up on Goob's page.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality. Like if you're a brand that's trying to use something like Legion or First Form did, right? They leveraged coaches and all these people with platforms, and that's great. You then have to be careful and understand like influencers are people too, right? And so you really need to go through a vetting process and probably understand what people are, not just look at their metrics, but also what are other products that they push. Does it look like they just push anything and everything? Or does it look like this person may want to be around for the long haul or in it for the right reasons? Again, that's how I would approach it. How everyone else individually approaches it, that's up to you. Go for quick cash, cool. Totally up to you. But when I go through the thought process of collaborations or anything like that, I'm trying to vet the person in general. Do they seem like a good person? Would I casually have a conversation with this person? Yes or no? Could I sit down and like have a coffee or go to lunch with this person? If all those boxes start to check, then I start to think like, okay, they're probably a decent person to go down this rabbit hole with and see if they are a smart partner at the moment. And sometimes even if you say those things, like you and I have now been a part of other businesses for some time. And I've seen great partnerships. I've seen terrible partnerships. I've seen things be inked in contract and then people completely change. And so you have to know that it is at the end of the day just business. So what is it? Hire slow, fire fast, that type of thing. Protect yourself if you are partnering with people, networks, whatever it is. If you are borrowing other people's audiences or they're trying to borrow your audience, you have to do homework. You have to vet. I'd protect yourself with a contract. If they try to make you sign something, make sure you understand everything that's going on in there because it unfortunately can get pretty dicey and you don't want to end up on Goob's page because somebody else was on there and then people start questioning your morals or your ethics and like what are you going to say now, because you then have to have an opinion about the person that turns out they weren't a good person or were doing shady stuff, and then people are going to say like, don't you vet your people? And you have to come back with like yeah, we actually do, this is the process. So just some things to keep in mind as you try to grow and scale. Nothing wrong with partnering, collaborations, JVs. Just understand the vetting process and don't just jump in because you see 500,000 followers and you think I'm going to make a bunch of money.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do want to be a quote unquote influencer, build your personal brand around a multitude of interests, right? Like I'm not trying to necessarily parrot Naval right now, or you are the niche of all of your interests, but if you are going to be a fitness influencer, there are a lot of subsections within fitness. There are supplements, there are tests, there are clothing lines, there are coaches, there are programmers, right? There are so many different things out there, meal prep services. And so if you're going to be an influencer, build your brand around an industry and then vet partnerships for affiliate marketing. That would be step one. Make sure they're people, if they're supplements, are they third party tested? Are they the highest of quality, right? Like you want to be a high integrity person. It's part of your reputation, which is the R in Live Rich, right? And so that's going to be step one. Step two is start to research and understand audience growth strategies to probably leverage boosted posts to expose yourself to new audiences, because if you're an influencer, the goal is to get people in, the goal is to educate, to entertain, and then lead them to whatever it is that you have to offer, right? And so those would be the two strategic things that you're going to want to start going down as far as rabbit holes if you do want to be an influencer and you want to build, your own personal brand and strategy. That's probably the angle I would take.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would also suggest don't just start trying to sell stuff right away if that is your goal. I think it's much easier just to start reviewing stuff, review products that you already use, because people can very quickly, if you're just starting out, figure out who's trying to sell them something versus someone who's being honest. And then I would say, like, I'm just making these things up. I have one of those, alarm clocks that wakes you up with the light, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't whatever the name of that is,
Yeah.
right? But if that's what you use, cool. Review yours. What do you like? What do you not like? And then go and buy 3 others, and then say like, actually turns out mine is the best one, or actually I ended up liking this other one better. Just things around your house that you already utilize in your industry, whether that's fashion or tech or home improvement items. Start there if nothing else, or whatever interests you. And that way it's documentary style. People are brought into the story. You're trying something out, and that'll help out as well versus you just being like, hey, hot sale, Amazon, $99 right now. Like, there's tons of Costco pages and deals and discount pages, which you can absolutely do. Use the link in bio. But if you're struggling for any of those things, just start reviewing stuff. It's the easiest thing. Do a little bit of research, and you'll be well on your way.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right, let's go ahead and move on to middle management. This is a quick blurb that we can hop into, and then I think we can get past into some of the deeper topics that we want to go to. So this is just a little tweet from Unusual Whales. If you don't follow, I suggest everyone follows on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Middle management positions accounted for almost 1/3 of layoffs in 2023. That's an increase from 20% in 2018. So 2018, 1 out of 5 layoffs from middle management. Fast forward to last year, at the end of the year, 1 out of 3 people who got laid off are middle management. What do you think's going on, man?
I think it's interesting because what was it a few weeks ago? We'd put out it was basically an opinion about what was going on with AI. Like, we all understand we're in a weird time right now, right? We're on the cusp of AI. We thought it would come for the, everyday task. And instead they started with creativity and like video editing and trying to basically create, beautiful masterpieces as well as like content and things like that, right? Like the entertainment industry, which they all freaked out. And then now it seems like they're trying to backtrack a little bit as far as what it can do and make sure that coding and some of the other like harder tasks that people don't really understand how to do, like the normal person. Like, I don't mess with some of it in the past. Like, I couldn't code anything if you asked me to or told me my life depended on it. No idea.
Mm-mm.
And so the thing that we shared a couple weeks ago was someone's take, and they said like, I think it's going to be a manager, and they're just going to basically be managing a bunch of AIs and maybe 1 or 2 people, right? And then this is kind of saying a little bit of the opposite based on data, that we're seeing 1/3 of layoffs happen to managers. And it's kind of like, okay, is this now with data suggesting that, managers, which were basically hired to keep track and everybody on task, right? Like, that's what a manager is. You get something from the top. The top says we need to hit these metrics, and you have a manager of a department or whatever it is say, okay, team, this is the angle we're going at. The executives are pushing us hard, and we know it sucks, but we're going to abandon this together, right? The team leader, essentially. And let's move together as quickly as we can, and I'm going to do my best to make sure we get incentives or bonus, whatever, right? They're just there to keep everybody on task. Now it sounds like because of the increases in technology, what happens in business is we start looking at the bottom line and profit, and we start saying, who's expendable? Who can we start just ditching? At least try, right? And so the executives aren't going to mess with their pay. So sounds like they're just like, you know what? With AI and all these other things, I think we can figure it out. Hopefully it works out? Question mark. But my initial gut reaction is this is going to be disastrous, because this sounds like what most people do when they have a initial reaction to something that's new, and then they try to widely adopt it before thinking second order, third order consequences through. They're just like, yeah, let's become more profitable. Let's get a better bonus for ourselves. which is the executives. And I think with AI, we can just make people do things and keep people on task. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. So, as with everything, right, context missing, there are certain other things that I wish we had to look at. There are other factors. So, something happened between 2018 and 2023. Kind of a big event, actually, just about smack dab in the middle. So, we have that to contest with. We have everything that happened to the stock market. Remember, corporations, their intention is profit, right? Like they're beholden to that. That is their point. How do we maintain profit? We increase our profit margin. How do we do that? Keeping costs down. And so, as we understand that a lot of remote jobs increased, we understand that we have a lot more contributors on the ground level. As AI has stepped up in scale, we have more contributors who leverage AI. And so that boosts the productivity. That boosts the outcome. And so there's actually a lesser need for the people to manage, as you were saying, because there's less humans. There's humans who have robot assistants, so you have to manage less humans right now. In the future, sure, it may be an AI manager, but now you need less managers because you have less humans. Because the other thing that happened is on the other side of the event that occurred in 2020 and 2021 with the advent of all of those virtual jobs, it wasn't very productive because people aren't in office, right? So they don't have someone staring at them or standing over their shoulder watching them work. And so that's where you see Elon come in, destroy 80% of the labor force at Twitter, and there's no downturn in productivity. We saw all of the massive tech layoffs with the same thing, right? All of that's coming from the advent of AI. And I think this is going to be exacerbated in the future. And the reason why I think it's going to increase is because of the non-compete news that came from the FTC last month, I believe. And so if you don't know, non-competes are going to be gone with the exception of rarities. Partnerships, if you sell a business, they'll protect the buyer. And the other thing is this: now to keep someone locked in that non-compete, they have to be an executive and they have to have certain metrics. And one of them is you have to pay them, I think it's $151,000 annually or more in order to keep them. And so I also look for companies to keep more A-plus players. And so they need to allocate more financial resources to keep those people. And so that money's got to come from somewhere. Remember, the company's goal is profit. And so who are the least important people if we have contributors, if we have AI, and if we have executives? Becomes that middle tier. So if this is you, if you are in that spot, there's never been a better time to take your skills that you already know and begin to start your own thing, right? Because again, we're looking at the destruction of non-competes. You're looking at skills that you've been paid to acquire and paid to sharpen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they're not going to have loyalty to you. You're only going to have loyalty to yourself, and no one else is coming to save you. As much as any of the companies we've ever worked for, and we romanticize them, at the end of the day, it's about profit versus people. And so if you don't want to be swept under the boat that's passing in hopes of profit, as a person, it's time to develop your skills and start building your own thing on the side to keep yourself safe. Definitely my advice.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough, because especially if you're in that manager position or a people managing position, doesn't matter what the title is, whether you're a manager or an exec, your job's not then so much to do the end task. And so you do lose that sharpness of that skill, right? For a long time, I was a copywriter, writing copy every single day for hours. And like I could instantly, you'd be like, Cam, I have this idea. And within an hour, I could have written you 10 emails, the next 10 posts, and just been done. Now, like I've got to sit there and like I can still do it. It just takes me longer, right? I've got to think things through more, think about how I want to do certain things. And I understand because I made my own framework and I can get there quickly. But it's true, like when you've been managing people more so to make sure they've got the work done, like you're then spot checking things to make sure it makes sense. versus in the practice of writing every day versus, in the muse, right? And it doesn't matter what your skill set is, even selling. Like you and I could sell whatever we need to. But at the same time, like we're not on calls every single day for 4 to 6 hours a day to just have that like cutthroat mentality of like flow through, get the price, go through objections and not, right? Like we would probably just be asking a bunch of questions and clarify what's going on and then, figure our way through. So it doesn't matter whatever your skill is, or if you really don't feel that you have skills, start developing them. Figure out what it is that you like to do. And the worst thing you can do is just say, well, maybe tomorrow. Best thing you can do is just start on YouTube, start watching random videos, figure out what maybe interests you, whether it is AI, tech, health and fitness, wellness, I don't know, meditation, candles, crafts, whatever that thing is, whatever your pathway is, start figuring those things out. Because yeah, you're right, man. Whether or not, I think it's going to be industry dependent as far as how the flow of I guess we'd call business organization goes. I would imagine like the tech industry is probably the first ones that excel with AI, right? It just makes sense. I could be wrong, but it just makes sense, right? Like they're already there. They're the ones creating it. So I would assume like they're the ones also like trying to figure out who sticks around and who goes with all these things. And
we've already seen that because they thought it was, take it back to Andrew Yang's campaign in 2016 when he introduced, or 2020, he introduced, it was 16, UBI, Universal Basic Income. He's talking about protecting the truck drivers from automation that was coming. We thought it was going to be the manual taskmasters, right, who were going to get replaced. And it was the thought workers who immediately got replaced because you have to build full-on robots to replace manual tasks. And right now, because of the advent of the internet and the information age, once upon a time, construction, the building, was where we were at as a society, where we evolved. Those were the highest paying jobs. Internet came, and so that got pushed down a level. And so now building online, same thing, construction, right? This is where your top tier coders come in, right? This is where everyone in the tech sector comes in. It costs more to maintain them than it does people who have manual skills. So why would we outsource this, or why would we automate this first when we can automate this? And again, save all of the money. Remember, if you work for a corporation, a major company, their goal is profit first before people, right? It is. And so logically, it just makes a ton of sense. The other thing really quick, you introduced one of the key principles that we talk about. When you're in the practice of the thing, if you're the middle manager, and at that time you're the copywriter or you're the salesperson, like you gave the example, you're highly skilled because you're practicing. Skills require practice. The axe needs to stay sharp. If you're not as skilled, you can work the same amount of time with the same amount of effort, and it's not going to have the same output. People fall into a productivity trap. We suggest that you find the thing you are effective at, right? Which is skill times productivity equals effectiveness. And this is why it's important to always master your craft and to always sharpen those skills, because they continue to stack, lead to the best version of you, the one who can build freedom and the one who is independent from the follies that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. So guys, join communities. Not necessarily on X. X has communities, Facebook groups, whatever platforms you use. We talk about 410s and 20, and we talk about little tidbits on things to do, whether it's Circle or school. If you're an entrepreneur, you've probably been inundated with school and everyone referring out now that, Hormozzi's with Sam Ovens. You've probably seen it everywhere, and everyone's launching their referral campaigns, and affiliate campaigns, I should say. So it doesn't matter what you want to join, like go to a platform and then start searching for communities that expose you to different ideas and possibilities. Like, it's great that you're here listening to us. We appreciate that. And yeah, we're going to launch the Live Rich community. We've already told you guys that. For sure, join that. But like, you can't just be in one thing and expect everything to come to you. Go to multiple different,
Mhm.
go down multiple different avenues, join multiple communities, read books or listen to podcasts, whatever everything is, to expose you to these different ideas.
Absolutely. That's great tactical advice. Go find your people.
Speaking of X and communities, I sent you over this because I just found this fascinating. Because there's this war against Elon, and guys, if you haven't been paying attention, totally fine. Michael and I didn't for a long time. We got off of almost all social media for a while because we just noticed our health just deteriorating, because when you're just exposed to all these constant like negatives, it's not great. That's number one. But then the other part of that is, even if it's something like Instagram and you're starting a business or have a business or want to do something, then it's comparison. X for me isn't comparison. It's just the constant, here's all the terrible stuff going on in the world. Instagram feels like it's all about comparison, because like, you don't get hit with as many like news or world stories because they've said we're not going to show you those things. It's all about, man, this person's 25, they're 10 years younger than me, and look right, in quotes, at what they're doing, even though who knows what's going on behind the scenes, right? Like, everyone thinks you have a glamorous life on social media, when in reality, maybe not. So I found it fascinating, though, that X is now the top news app downloaded. And number one is X, 2 was New York Times, 3 was Wall Street Journal, 4 was Citizens, 5 was Washington Post, 6 was Bloomberg, and 7 was CNBC. Now, I believe it was last week, or maybe it was just you and I talking. Who knows if it was recorded or not. But like, the average viewer for a traditional news outlet, was over, I think like 55 to 65 was like number 2, and then 65 plus was like number 1, right? Like, it's the boomers. It's the older generation, which is fine. Like, that makes sense. It's what they grew up doing. And now other people are going to other places or seeking out other things, Reddit, X, even YouTube, just to learn things and kind of go through the resources to actually find an answer and seek something out, versus just constantly being told something. So does this surprise you that X is kind of the top downloaded app? Now, this isn't usage. While X does, say that they have over 600 million monthly users, this isn't usage. This is just now the top downloaded app. So is this surprising to you? And why do you think that this is the top downloaded app?
Not surprising at all, and multiple reasons. Number one, let's look at the genesis story behind the social media apps that we've talked about. Instagram is a visual platform where you're sharing your best life, your vacations, your dog when it's behaving, and all the things. It's, hey, look at me, which is why we have comparison syndrome heavier on Instagram, because of the inception of the app itself. When Twitter was founded, a couple decades back almost at this point, it was 120 characters or less. There was no photographs, and it was mostly thinkers on the app. It was the news source, right? Like, that's where the news was reported. Now, over time, things have changed. Obviously, Elon purchased the app. Elon, big free speech advocate, versus traditional media, which very much so. If you go on the left with CNBC, MSNBC, or you go on the right with Fox News and all those things, they parrot the same stuff. And it's got a twisted edge that's meant to persuade you into following into their echo chamber and starting to greatly dislike your fellow person because of things that they believe, which is silly, right? We need more conversation, not less. Also with that, they repress the other side. Other social media platforms have been busted out for working with the government, oppressing and repressing information, whether it's misinformation or just standard stuff, right? Like, that's all been proven 100% true. And so Twitter is still primarily a news platform. Elon's making the pivot, right? It's going to be video. It's going to be the everything app. It's going to be a search engine. It's going to be all this stuff. But the original genesis story is it's still news. And like you said, it's a constant exposure to the cesspool of reality, right? When you go to Twitter and you go to the following section or For You section, which is the suggested algorithm, it's going to show you everything that's going on in the world. And if you'll have an open mind, you'll have a better understanding of the things that actually occur. if you don't have an open mind, it's only going to enrage you further, because they do show you everything that actually is going on in the world, unlike every mainstream media, unlike the other social media networks. And the final reason why I think it's not a surprise that it is the most downloaded app, we're prone to downloading social media. Instagram, Facebook, places we can engage, places where we can leave our mark, places where we can contribute to a conversation. You're just reading and listening and watching when you download MSNBC, CNBC, Fox, right? Like, it's just something else to read. And you can typically read things for free online that are not, behind a gate or a paywall or something like that. So by the very nature of it, it's not shocking, because we're trained to be pro social media at this point. So I would expect nothing less. And then finally, the last point is, look at the boomers. They got stuck in time, like we all do. I like music I used to like. I don't like music now, right? Like, we all get stuck in time. I think you covered this. It's the second generation swing. It's in the mid 30s when it happens.
Yep, 35. Although nobody likes music now. Like, let's just be
Also
honest.
true.
Like,
It's terrible.
yeah,
It's
I don't think it was. Yeah, you have Snoop Dogg and Eminem coming in being like, even rap sucks. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
It's terrible. And so it's not surprised that they get locked into what they believe is the beacon of truth, right? It used to be Walter Cronkite. It used to be Dan Rather. You used to be able to trust the news, we think, right? Now we know better. We didn't know this stuff in the 80s and 90s. But now if you go deep dive and go look back then, you can see that, everything was still smoke and mirrors. And so it doesn't surprise me, because old people are locked into what they want, and younger people just make up more of the population at this point. And so they go into different places like Twitter, pro social media. Again, it's the generations, plural, that have grown up with it. So none of this is a surprise. And I think the gap is only going to increase as the timeline for, people in the upper ages starts to taper off. Only a bigger percentage of younger people remain. And so this is only going to get exacerbated.
Yeah, and just to be clear, guys, X, Twitter, has its own algorithm. So you're still going to see things, and we still know negativity, or, the negative headline is what gets reviews. And so on Twitter, a lot of times, right, it's like, this is a thread about this thing. It doesn't have to be conspiracy theory, right? It could be health or fitness, or this review of tech, home improvement, since we already started down that earlier. It still could be those things. But we know, like, those get the most clicks. And so that's what the algorithm's going to see people are interacting with, and that's what's shown. So that still exists. And until all those things are fixed, there's not going to be a perfect, social media platform. And it'll probably never get fixed, right? Because the goal of any platform is to keep you on it. So you've got to, I think what you said is key, and why you and I, when we, I don't know, almost at the same time, we're usually in sync, but we both came back to X because we both started seeing each other's stories around the same time, but we looked at it through a different lens, right? I then was just curious about what was going on and what were people saying on all sides of every political spectrum, as well as in the world, what's kind of going on, and how are people interacting with all the AI and everything that's going on. What are average people's takes, and then what are people that are in those niches, what are their takes? And so that's why I started going back on, just seeing what was I going to be exposed to when I got on there, what were people seeing, and then B, what were takes. And I went at it that way versus going in and then as soon as I see something being outraged, because that gets you into overwhelm and hopelessness, right? If you just see terrible things going on, war, and you're like, well, that's terrible, we need to stop it, I need to go call my senator. Great, do it. But then that leads instantly into, after the overwhelm, is the hopelessness, right? You're like, because I can't make a difference, I can't do anything.
That's right.
And so you can't allow those things to happen. You have to be able to, I don't want to say be numb to those things. You just have to be objectively remove yourself from yourself for a second and just see the information coming in, and then be like, okay, if these things upset me, is there something I could do? Can I do something locally? Could I call a senator? Okay, great. Then do those action steps. And if you find that you still can't do those things and you keep going to hopelessness, then you probably aren't ready to be exposed to social media, and maybe you yourself need to take some time away and possibly do like a dopamine or something reset. Because if you're constantly triggered, or you constantly find yourself, like you always joke about closing Instagram and opening it back up, we all do it. If you find yourself doing that multiple times a day, then you probably need to actually take some time away, refresh your receptors, and then come back in a different way. Or maybe try a different app completely where you don't have your friends on there. You don't see the same stuff that you're always, seeing, because Instagram knows you by now after being on it for 2, 3, 5 years. Instagram knows exactly what you want to see, right? So might suggest a couple of those things if you constantly find yourself being triggered, because I'll admit, for a long time, I didn't want to go back on any of these platforms. And then since I kind of did some of those refreshes in my head and then went at it from a different angle, more exploratory and curious, I find it does. Like, don't get me wrong, seeing terrible things should bother anybody. Like that, like should definitely bother you. But as far as like mentally, I don't find it as draining. But I also limit myself. I don't let myself, spend days on there.
Absolutely. I think this is just principled advice that we can use here or anywhere else. Don't make it a who, make it a what. Far too often, especially in the time that we live in, people are quick to put someone else on the opposite side of them, right? And so when we see something happening, we make it a who problem. We make it about these people over there. We don't make it a what. We're not talking about war. We're not talking about stopping war. Yeah, don't get me wrong. There are certain people, like, they will say words like stop the genocide, stop killing, stop the war. And that's happening in multiple fronts across the world in multiple countries, not just any one place, right? But when we then say, well, it's those evil people, we make it a who, and you get enraged, right? But when we make it a what, we make it about a problem that will ultimately have a solution. And when you make it about, I can't do anything, you're making it a who. When it comes to you, make it a how. How can I contribute? What other people share the same opinion as me? Who's ready to take action with me? If it's about a problem that's external, if you're going to go deal with a human, don't make it about a who, make it about a what. Something happened, a problem. It's got a solution. But when it comes to you internally, don't make it a who. It's not your fault. Make it a how. How can I do this? How can I achieve it? How can I overcome this? Right? So stop making things about who. Make it about the what and the how. And this is how we can solve the problems, and we can all move forward together.
Life advice. You guys, we got you with the bait and switch on the headline, and now we're here just giving you life lessons and philosophy. Joke's on you.
All right, man. We got 5-6 minutes left in the topic. Let's crush.
Yeah, we got ultra-processed foods do not cause obesity, says U.S. government's top diet advisors in bombshell review of current evidence. In quotes, studies have been biased. This is a dailymail.com story. Here's a quick little intro. Ultra-processed foods demonized for years for their supposed effect on our waistline do not actually make people fat, according to a bombshell report. Look at that copywriting, guys. Just leading you in. U.S. government's top dietitians found limited evidence these foods cause people to gain weight faster than any other food. After reviewing more than a dozen studies, man, they did a lot of work reviewing a dozen studies dating back to the 1990s, considering there's probably thousands of studies, man.
Quite a selective meta-analysis.
Yeah, they did more than a dozen. Also, guys, again, I'm breaking up the story. I apologize. But notice the emphasis after reviewing more than a dozen. So maybe it was 13, right? Like in the last 30 years, they looked at 13. You could easily switch that around being like, they only looked at a dozen, right? Anyway, but the snippets suggest there is nothing intrinsic about processed food that causes obesity, and that the amount of calories one eats is the most important factor for weight gain. People have been hearing a lot about the health risks of ultra-processed foods recently, which might make this reporting surprising. Carolyn Williams, a registered dietitian who was not involved in the review, told Daily Mail. I'll screen share just so that way people can see this. Sorry, I forgot to do that while I was reading. That probably makes sense in case people are watching. But they have this nice little diagram as well, which, look at this. The unhealthiest ultra processed foods. You know, they've got
Hold
all
on.
the classic.
We're looking at the New York Times, Wall Street Journal.
Oh no.
Oh no. Technical difficulties, folks. Bear with us. We'll get it.
I'll link to it in the show notes, and while you're talking, I'll bring it up. But there's this graph, and it shows basically the unhealthiest ultra processed foods. It's all the greats. Even like, man, I can't. I gotta say it. Sweet Baby Ray's is on there. Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. I'm not gonna lie, it's on there along with ketchup, Coca-Cola, Zebra Cakes, Slim Jims, Hillshire Farm, Doritos, Cheetos, lean cuisines. I mean, it's quite the chart, and I'll bring it up here in a second, dude. You can't knock lean cuisines, man. That's I'd literally would eat lean cuisines, pizza pockets, and their meals, like their 400, 600 calorie meals in college. Like that was, mwah, that was it in college, man. You were living it.
How you gonna bring up college and not bring up a pack of noodles? Where's your ramen? Where's your loyalty?
Oh, absolutely. Ramen noodles every day. My friend blew my mind when he figured out, and obviously this is terrible now, I would never do this, like heating up a Ziploc baggie, but he figured out like you could cook them in a Ziploc baggie in the microwave, and he would make these concoctions, and it was just insane, but they tasted so good.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, folks.
Probably shouldn't nuke a Ziploc baggie and just leach plastic into your already ultra processed food. Actually, maybe it helps. Maybe it counters some of the stuff. If you're eating ramen, you know, maybe it counters some of those chemicals and additives. But dude, why? I don't understand why break this story now when there's just overwhelming evidence of the contrary. And then say something like, we looked at 13. Well, okay, sorry guys, more than a dozen. Let's quote it. In 30 years, 30 plus years, 34 years. If you're saying back to the 90s. Why counter that argument when everything that we know in this field is incorrect? But then also, like, even most people in the mainstream are coming around to there seems to be issues here with a lot of this processed food.
So first, my mind's gone in about 10 different directions, and I think I've got a way that we could make this a very simplified training, and we could probably do a deep dive on this. Just to give context, because I'm going to take everyone in a couple different directions. Number one, if you're looking at 3 decades of studies and you can only come up with 13, your meta-analysis is biased. Can guarantee there's been more than 12 studies done in the last 3 decades on the efficacy of processed food and weight gain, right? So there's that. That's just cut and dry from the front. Number two.
What's scary, dude, is it says that it was a group of 20 nutrition experts. That's what's scary, though. Just to that first point that you're making, like 20 nutrition experts that are quote unquote registered dietitians saying, and it went on to say that they're making the guidelines for 2025 to 2030. Now, again, if you're looking to the government to make food guidelines, DM us. We'll get you in touch with some good people.
Eat your bugs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, health experts. Remember, anyone who's gone through and has the letters at the end of their name, they completed the process. It doesn't mean they're a genius. I've met incredibly intelligent dietitians, doctors, medical practitioners. I've met some who don't know the types of joints in the body. That's a medical doctor. That's scary, right? Or if you have 100 people in the room of the same profession, someone's the best, someone's the worst. That's just how this goes. But I want to offer a really hard steel man on this. Do you remember when we were in Dallas at PEC 5? And I think it was Brandon.
Shout out to PEC.
Yep, shout out to PEC. Brandon DeCruz gave a presentation, and it was on the high flux lifestyle, which is his. Mm-hmm. But he cited the study of the Amish.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to give everyone the Cliff's Notes. We all know the Amish, at least in this country. They live a different lifestyle. They don't live a modern lifestyle, but they do eat like shit. Highly processed foods, lots of sugar. And it's not like they're in the gym every day and they're not running a half marathon every day. They're walking. They're doing physical outdoor activity like we used to. Remember, as technology emerges and it advances, we're outsourcing our skill or our time. Technology only advances so humans have an easier life. And so every time that happens, we get more desk jobs. So we need things like sitting on a core ball, or we need a walking treadmill for a desk, something ridiculous because we're strapped to computers. And they studied the Amish, and these people are doing manual labor, nothing more. But Monday through Saturday, maybe, 6 days a week, they're getting 20,000 plus steps. And on the seventh day of rest, they're still getting 10,000 steps in. And the men were single digit body fat. By the way, if you don't know what that means, those are visible abs. Those are visible 6 and 8 packs. Those are veins exposed. And the women were under 20% body fat, which is similar, right? Because women naturally are carry more fat. They're the creators of life, or the bringers of life. And so because of that, we have evolved in our, different bodies for different roles. But the women were also jacked, and all they do is walk. So yeah, you can eat like total crap, and you can, at the end of the day, look a certain way. But I'm going to tell you, it's the compounding interest of your lifestyle. We can look at high-level CrossFitters. I'll take my wife. When she was training 2 to 3 times a day, she's 5 feet tall, about 130 pounds. And this is in her late 40s. So we're not talking about someone in their 20s. She walks around with a visible 6-pack. And this is a woman that small who's eating 400 grams of carbohydrates a day, right? Carbs make you fat. No, they don't. Your lifestyle makes you fat. Your lack of movement makes you fat. There are certain other environmental factors. The amount of, alteration in our food, things like, glyphosate, however you say it. I always say that backwards. The plastics, right? Like all the things that some people are going to talk about seed oils. Look, if you're eating fruit and you're cooking protein in a seed oil, it's better than a Big Mac. So at the end of the day, it's just about your choices and the way that you move. But the compounding interest of how you've lived your life over, if you've lived an unhealthy lifestyle, a sedentary lifestyle for decades, you have compounding interest of internal health problems. More movement, less calories doesn't always solve that. For a lot of people, it does, for sure. But some people have created internal strife within their operating systems. You don't have one, you have many, and they're linked together. Go down an MMU rabbit hole with Vince Pitstick if you want to know more about that, right? But you have to do some internal healing before your body's ready to go back to homeostasis. Conversely, people who live in the gym, they have taken their calories and invested them to where their body is different. They have more lean tissue, which burns more calories, which changes the way the blood sugar regulation happens in your body. And so they can use more calories, more carbs, more protein to distribute for better things because they've lived compounding interest lifestyle over the course of years. And so it's more about your lifestyle and the way that you live it, right? A very common thing when we walk into a gym. My wife got asked for a meal plan last week. People see the way you look and they're like, how do you eat? I want to eat like that. Cool. How did you eat when you started? What did you do when you started? I'm just starting. You don't need to be on my meal plan for my Chris Bumstead's, 5th Olympia. You don't need to be on that. That's too harsh. Where do you need to start? Right? And so more than anything, it's about the lifestyle. So I can steel man that side with the Amish study, but we can definitely go very much against it with everything that we've literally found out about the way that our food operates and about, the people who are in power creating the food pyramids and the guidelines and what they drive us to because of who sponsors them. And so it's one of those things where at the end of the day, the information's out there, the context is missing. The most important thing is you and how you do it, right? Cam will tell you knowledge is just knowing. It only becomes a skill when you apply it. You can understand working out. You can understand eating healthy. As soon as you take action on that and make it an actionable skill in your daily life, you're going to start to see the results. Knowing is not enough. You must do. And doing daily becomes your lifestyle. And that becomes the number one factor about how you are on the inside and how you are on the outside.
That was excellent. No counterpoint. No, I don't think any further context needed. I will say I think the Amish study wasn't Cheetos and like Lay's potato chips, right? Like they were still making the food. It was just what we would consider still processed with lots of sugar and like, homemade bread and things like that, right? I'd have to pull that back up. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, we'll have to dive back into it. And by the way, for anyone out there, as we bring these things up, if you want a deeper dive, if you want us to take one topic and do far deeper research so we can present more context, reach out to us. We would love to do that, but we want to know what you guys want to hear more about.
Absolutely. Michael_connects, Cam.explains. DM us, let us know if you have questions, and we'll definitely cover them on later this week when we do the listener Q&A as far as and along with the rest of the awesome topics we have planned, plus a couple trainings. But dude, yeah, I think you're 100% right. It's always context. The thing that everyone has to remember too, men and women are different. Sorry, that's controversial nowadays. There's a reason why an overweight male typically could come to you or I, and we could just put him into a deficit, kind of, make sure he's eating enough protein and then limit either fat or carbohydrates depending on, what he wants to do and what his goals are. And like, he could probably drop 30 pounds if he's over 200 pounds pretty easily. Like, you've done it. I've done it several times with different clients. Like, it's a lot easier. Women, it's a lot harder if there are internal issues or hormones or things that are going on. So definitely, if you think you have issues, yeah, absolutely. Follow Vince, follow MMU, follow people that kind of dive into the functional rabbit hole, because you may have a few things that need to be tweaked. It's very easy to do a flush, something like that. For 14, 30 days, you can actually be a new person. All right, man. I think that's good for the day. I know you got to go, unfortunately, but we actually got through all of our topics this time. I'm super proud of us. But we only also went through 4. So instead of announcing, 7, 8 at the beginning, we've limited it now. And so hopefully we can cover more versus having to backtrack.
I like it. Eventually we should get into some rapid fire. Here's the topic, 30 seconds, just go.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you for joining us again. Hit us in the DMs if you guys have questions for our Q&A session later this week, as well as if you just in general want to know any type of communities or any suggestions as far as what we're covering, or maybe you're in between. Maybe you are a middle manager trying to figure some stuff out. Always hit us in DM. We'll get back to you usually within a day or two as far as if you need help or suggestions or just looking for some advice. We'll do what we can. Michael nor I have all the answers, but we definitely know a lot of people who may be able to help out. So guys, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on Run the Block.
Get to work.